up, guys? It's Dr. Meghan Wieser again, your physio coach at Recharge, and this is episode 3 of Shit I Feel Strongly About. Today I want to talk to you about corrective exercise. There's no such thing as corrective exercise. That's it. I'll see you next week. Just kidding. No, but seriously, I do want to talk to you about corrective exercise today. And yes, that is true. I do believe there is no such thing as a corrective exercise, and I'll go into why, a couple of reasons why, and some misconceptions surrounding that. I feel like it's a really popular buzzword right now and has been for I don't even know how long in the fitness industry. So I kind of want to dispel a little bit of that. But what is a corrective exercise? Put simply, it is an exercise or a series of movements designed to specifically target a dysfunction or an imbalance. So a couple reasons that corrective exercise is not a thing. One being that it implies that there is a wrong and a right way to move. Now, don't get me wrong, there are certainly more efficient ways and more optimal ways to move, especially when you're dealing with really heavy weights or if it's somebody who's really new to certain movements or exercises or anything like that. Obviously, an optimal way or a more efficient way to do things and things that make the movements and tasks look more organized. But saying that there's a corrective exercise, or even this whole entire realm of there being a corrective exercise paradigm, implies that there's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way to do things in the context of movement. And there's no wrong way to move. The body was built to move. Your spine was built to flex, extend, rotate, side bend. It's built to do everything. Your body was built to do things, not just sit and be still. And there's no correct way to do that. There's no wrong way to do that. The definition of corrective implies that there's a finite right way to do it and a finite wrong way to do it, and that's just not the case. Reason number 2 that corrective exercise just should not be a thing. Often when, we get to the point of having to prescribe a corrective exercise after seeing something in a screen. And often what people interpret from these screens are that the conclusion is that one specific muscle or one specific joint is the reason for this person having this imbalance. Some cases it could just be that that's the way the person was built and that's how they move, that's how they utilize their body. Other cases, it's not that simple. You'll hear people say that the reason that their patella or the kneecap isn't tracking well is because of the VMO, the vastus medialis obliquus muscle in the quad. That has been dispelled long ago, luckily, in the PT world. Or you'll see people who have shoulder mobility issues and the immediate jump to the conclusion of lower traps not working, or they need to do scapular exercises. Or if you squat, the knees drift in, it's the external rotators. Better fix those, so let's do a million clamshells until the external rotators do what you want it to do during a squat. And that's a simplification of a larger concept. It promotes this thought virus out there that these muscles aren't doing a certain thing, like your VMO isn't firing or your glute isn't firing or something like that. And that in itself is not a good thought process. If you have a working nervous system and you have muscles, then your muscles are firing, period. There's no such thing as glute amnesia, and you don't need to do that as a prerequisite to another movement or another larger movement just based on one small, simple asymmetry or imbalance that was found in an arbitrary movement screen. Reason number 3, corrective exercise should just go. In the absence of any type of injury or pain or ache or history of aches or pains or anything like that, those providing these screens or administering these screens tend to, it creates the environment for that clinician or that practitioner, that whoever, to look for problems that aren't there, or to create a problem based on something that they see and to hyper-focus on one little thing. Going back to, our bodies are meant to move. Our bodies aren't also meant to be like these perfect specimens either. Everybody has a different way to move things. Where if somebody's right hand dominant, they're probably going to have a little bit more musculature on their right arm than on their left arm, and be able to move it a little bit more than the right arm than the left arm. That's just how it is because of life. We're not built to be symmetrical on both sides all the time. You need to think about the demands of the person and their life and their goals and stuff like that. But these screens create the environment for people to start looking for issues or create issues out of the things that they're seeing. So if I have less range of motion on one shoulder versus the other, like, oh, you're going to get shoulder pain because you have less range of motion on that side. Like, no, that's not the case at all. I'm, as a coach, the better alternative to trying to do some lat reset or scap reset or other bullshit would be to do like a landmine option instead and not allow them to utilize their back and go through what they have within their shoulder, or do a floor press or something like that. Still allow these people to do these things, but not resort to, oh, it must be the lat if they can't get their shoulder above their head, so let's just hammer into that. And reason number 4, there's probably more reasons, but we don't have all day. So the last reason I'm going to go over today why corrective exercise should not be a thing anymore is because the very, very last thing we need right now or ever is another reason to delay somebody starting movement or exercise or training. Stop looking for things to tell people they need to do X, Y, and Z before they do this. You need to be smart about having somebody start a fitness journey or exercise or training. You need to do that responsibly and in an organized and purposeful way. But in the absence of injury, don't search for things to be an issue before starting. When it is okay to kind of say, hey, maybe don't do this yet, or hey, you need to do this before you do this, would be in like a recovery scenario, like if this person had surgery, or if they're currently dealing with a present ache or pain or injury or something like that. Like in the case of beginning like plyometrics, like jump roping or running or something like that, that person's calves should be able to take on the same forces and demands that are required of those muscle tissues and those structures during jump roping, plyometrics, and running. So if somebody can't do like single leg calf raises for a certain period of time or to a certain extent, then they probably should hold off on doing plyometrics, jump ropes, running, and stuff like that. That's a case where I would say, okay, maybe like you need to put a hard stop on some things. But if there's no worry about injury, there's no present injury or anything really concerning the person, obviously you have to go back to their mindset and how fearful they are and what their experience is with working out to begin with. Before you start something, you need to be responsible about that. But creating these narratives that people need to fix everything and they need to be these perfectly curated specimens and perfectly symmetrical in every joint before starting squats, deadlifts, hinges, pushes, anything, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself and on that person. Just start smart and start slow and see how things go. If you guys had seen our first episode of this with the skill development, the 4 pillars of skill development, volume management, time under tension, progressive overload, and specificity, those 4 things apply in really well to somebody who's just first starting off on something. So if you do these screens with somebody and you're saying their lower trap isn't firing or there's something wrong with their lower trap or whatever, yet you're not able to really talk to them about what it means to get better at something and to improve something, there's a little bit of a mismatch here, and it becomes very meaningless to the person that you're inevitably trying to train. So when you're starting off with somebody, especially in the absence of injury, you need to go back to those 4 pillars. I think those apply here, even without talking about a specific skill. You need specificity, you need progressive overload, you need time under tension, and you need repetition and volume. And in this case, I would call that more consistency. Developing you and your clients together what works well for them in their life. Even more so than you understanding these concepts or the 4 pillars of skill development or progression, your client needs to understand that, right? Like you talking about what's messed up about their multifidi or their lower trap or their glute or whatever magic muscle you find to be the issue in these screens, they're not going to understand that, and they're just going to move into things and move into their activity with a lot of fear because they're just afraid to do anything because, oh, they're going to screw up their lower trap if they do this. Or their shoulder is just, they can't do this because their shoulder's screwed up because of whatever they found in that movement screen. What are you trying to even correct here? When you're hyper-focused on one specific joint or one specific muscle that you think may be the cause of something, when you're not even zooming out and explaining to this person more global concepts that are actually going to really affect their lifestyle moving forward. Whether or not their lower trap is firing, they could care less about. They're going to be more interested in what's going to make them more consistent, what's going to affect their health, and how they're able to take some control and have some autonomy over that. So, corrective exercise, no such thing. There's no wrong or right way to move. We need to not be hyper-focused on these small little things, especially in the absence of injury and it's somebody just trying to change their lifestyle for the better. We need to stop fear-mongering people and telling people this works and this doesn't. If you are a healthy individual, everything works. And the very last thing we need, or anybody needs, is yet another reason to delay some type of movement or exercise or training. Start simple, start small, and go from there. If you liked this video and you liked our content, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next week.